that. This is something I seldom do. We as a country are taking this seriously. It's still the Democratic Party. Keep your eyes on the prize.
Attention all football fans. If you can't see your team play, come and dine with us and watch it live at Boardman, Canfield, or Cortland. Or staying at home, we'll deliver right to your door. That's Coca's Pizza. We serve it hot.
And welcome, and glad to be with you, and thanks to the folks at Coca's Pizza. Good stuff. Heard they even delivered the other night, and they chowed down right here in the studio. Well, I haven't seen you all weekend. A lot of things have happened, and got Mario here running the controls. I'm sure everything's going to be delightful today. But I'll tell you, first of all, I hate to keep recycling this, but let's go back to 60 Minutes on Sunday when Scott Pelley sat down with Bob Woodward. And of course, they were socially distanced. And it's just fascinating to watch this president try to defend himself. Also, I've got a neat clip from Fox News where Brett Baer even shut down the BS of one of the president's defenders. And we will have that up in just a second. Another thing I want to talk about today, though, and we will talk about, is the fact that I feel that people are they're just COVID weary, if you will. They're tired of taking the precautions. They're tired of the mask. They're tired of it all. And a lot of people are just acting like it's over. I had some situations in the past few days myself where I had to think twice. Since this whole thing has started, I have eaten out probably 7 times. I've eaten inside 3 times. One of them was yesterday. Wasn't particularly uncomfortable, but I felt it was a good enough space and spacing between the tables, but I was sitting at the same table inside with other people. So that concerned me. And also on Saturday, and I'm not talking behind his back in case you're watching, Anthony, my barber, but I went to the barber, and he's currently, the COVID situation led to some changes in his business, and he's not working out of the barbershop at present. He's working out of his house. So I went over to his house, and I noticed that he wasn't wearing a mask. He had 2 other guys there because he was running behind, so he had 2 other guys there. He had me there, and I kept my mask on, but no, the other people weren't wearing their mask. So later on, I called him about it because he is a good barber. Those are hard to find. And I just said, not to get on your case. I just want you to know in the future, I want you to wear a mask if you don't mind. It just made me feel uncomfortable. And he thanked me. He said, yeah, man, I had so much on my mind, you caught me slipping. Because, he had the windows open. He had 2 fans on. So I feel like that kept things down to, fairly safe. But right now, all we know for sure is that you wearing a mask protects me wearing a mask protects you, and it's the least we can do. It's not a big sacrifice. And even though the president and the vice president are promising that there's a miracle right around the corner, I'm not so sure about that. And I think our behavior as a society will probably extend the period that we are going through this COVID pandemic, because a lot of people are just not acting right. And by the way, and that's from the president on down. When the president is told that the state of Nevada doesn't allow assemblies of over 50 people, and then he has his assembly anyway. So much for states' rights. See, this has become the Trump party. Remember that the Republican Party used to be very adamant about states' rights. The governor of that state imposed his rules, and the president of the United States basically gave him the finger and filled 2 venues with his supporters, mostly who did not wear a mask. So you've already got the situation that has resulted from the motorcycle gathering in Sturgis, where there's been, that turned into somewhat of a super spreader. The states of South Dakota and North Dakota, very thinly populated, but per capita, their cases are rising faster than almost any state now, thanks to a bunch of middle-aged guys trying to relive their youth on their Harleys, with no mask, of course. We are our own worst enemies, so I don't anticipate this going away too soon. But let's take a look real quick, once again, to kind of reframe things. The President of the United States talked to Bob Woodward, some in person, mostly by phone, but he had multiple interviews. He knew he was being recorded. Let's get all that out front. And Scott Pelley of 60 Minutes asked him, why did Trump decide to talk to him in the first place?
To be honest with you,
Sure, I want you to
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't want to create a panic.
The president didn't cooperate with your first book about the administration, and in that book you said the administration was having a nervous breakdown, which makes me wonder, why did he cooperate with this one?
I think he realized that the first book, Fear, in 2018 was true. He kept telling me in the interviews for this book that he made a mistake not talking to me, and he actually said at one point it was his fault that he didn't talk. And so he heard from people in the White House, people in his circle, that actually fear was true and that I would not put words in his mouth if he talked to me.
Did you end up getting more cooperation from the president than you were banking on?
Yes.
I am used to pestering presidents for an interview. He was calling you.
Yes, he
Why
was.
do you think so?
He had things he wanted to say. I think he decided that he was going to let me inside. He kept going back to fear. You know, why didn't I talk to you? I should have. It was my fault. And then we got going in December. The first interview was in the Oval Office.
These interviews were occurring randomly at all hours of the day and night?
Well, not past 10 o'clock, but sometimes at 10.
At 10 o'clock at night?
Yes.
He would call you. The phone
Yes.
would ring, and they would tell you to stand by for the president.
Yes, I mean, you have an audio tape of this where they come on, Mr. Woodward, the president, and there'd be a beep, I think, indicating their recording.
The president was aware that he was being recorded?
Indeed, every time, I mean, you have a tape of me telling him I'm recording this like I always did, and it's all on the record. A couple of times he went off the record, and I did not use that.
Mr. Woodward, the president.
Hi, Bob.
President Trump, how are you?
How are you?
I'm turning my recorder on here as I always do,
Good.
just so I...
Were the interviews with President Trump revealing or frustrating?
Sometimes they were frustrating. They were revealing because I think he reached a point where we were communicating, and I would also have time to prepare questions, and I would call him. I had a number where I would call, and he would call back sometimes in 5 minutes, sometimes 2 days later.
Now, I know you've heard this and it's been beat to death, and I don't want to continue that trend, but I think some things need to be clarified. And the interesting thing was that to watch some of the people in the president's circle try to defend him. He said what he said. He knew he was being recorded, as I said. So what's the big deal? You said these things, Mr. President. Now you're going to try to cast aspersions on Mr. Woodward. Well, you talked to him. Nobody made you. And you said what you said. And what he said, by the way, was in stark contrast to what he was saying to you and me, the public, during February and early March. He said we had this under control. He said it was going to go away. You remember all those things. In fact, I'll refresh your memory a little bit later. But I am very proud to tell you that Fox News does have at least one or two real journalists that work there. Forget the primetime crew. They're just there to massage Trump's ego. I'm talking about Chris Matthews with Fox News Sunday, and he had a pretty good interview with the president a few weeks ago. And I'm also talking about this guy, Brett Baer, who called out one of the president's spokespersons on a total inaccuracy. The president did tell Woodward one thing and the American people another thing, and Brett calls him out.
All you just heard what was said. They're coming hard after the president for what he said to Bob Woodward and what he said on the record.
Well, Brett, I mean, what you heard there from TJ Ducklow is that he couldn't articulate an answer to your question of what would Joe Biden have done differently. And we know without question that President Trump's move to restrict travel from China saved thousands of American lives. Dr. Fauci says so. All medical experts say so. And we know that Joe Biden would not have done that. He called it hysterical xenophobia and fear-mongering. And what you have now with in the wake of the excerpts from the Bob Woodward book is that I think what's happened and what's got everybody all excited is that's all packaged up and it says Bob Woodward's name on the cover. But in fact, the things that are contained in there are the same things that President Trump was saying publicly. He views it as part of his job as President of the United States.
It's not true. When he was saying publicly that the virus would go from 15 to 0 and then it was magically going to wash away, that is not the same thing. He's telling Bob Woodward that it's a deadly virus that travels over the air and it's really serious, and I like to downplay it. He was not saying the same things publicly as he was privately to Bob Woodward.
It was public knowledge at the time. The Washington Post and others, and it was discussed in coronavirus briefings. Everyone knew that it was transmitted through things like coughing.
Okay, but what you just said was whether what he was saying privately and publicly was the same. It's not.
Dr. Fauci says it is the same. You just played the soundbite from him. Dr. Fauci said there was no appreciable difference between what the president was discussing privately versus what he was saying publicly.
With Fauci, not with Bob Woodward.
From Dr. Fauci.
With Fauci, not Bob Woodward. I want to move on.
The question is, was the president being straight with the American people? And he was.
Okay.
Every step of the way, the president was straight with the American people. There is no question of that.
Yeah, he was about as straight. He was about as straight as a corkscrew. Obviously, you know what he said and when he said it, and for him to pretend that, and for this person who's obviously he's paid to carry the president's water, but nothing could be further from the truth. He wasn't telling Bob Woodward and the American people the same thing at the same time. In fact, you know that he didn't really get serious. He sat down by March 11th, I believe it was a Wednesday night, because that's the night I watch all those Chicago shows. And he actually cut into Chicago Fire. How dare you? But the bottom line is that was the first time he was serious. And in fact, I think he cut into Chicago PD, by the way. But anyway, now that I just want to get it straight if I'm going to tell the story. But unlike some people, but speaking of the president, but the truth is that's when he got serious about it. As early as the Monday of that week, he was on Hannity talking about how it was not such a big deal and we had it under control. And you can remember using the administration using words like we've got this contained and you know, and of course, always blaming China, which that's fine. But guess what? We're the greatest country in the world. At least that's what we like to tell everybody again and again and again. And yet the greatest country in the world has the greatest number of cases of COVID-19, the greatest number of COVID-19 deaths. So we must be doing something wrong. One of the things we do wrong is to ignore the science that is before us. But, you know, I can understand how that happens when you have a president who gives an inconsistent message. When he stands on the stage with Dr. Fauci back in the early days and tells you, he just kind of agrees with most everything Fauci says. And then they started having their differences because the most important thing for the president was getting the economy up and running again so he'd have something to hang his hat on. Because as it stands, he's got a weakened economy. He's got a poor rating for his handling of COVID-19. And this could go either way. This really could. Now, I'm saying, I will say this, and somebody brought it up earlier about the enthusiasm for this president. In fact, I heard that on the way in on a station called SCOTUS. No, pardon me, that is POTUS, the people of the United States. The politics of the United States for the people of the United States on Sirius XM. And one guy in California was saying he was seeing a lot of Trump flags out there. And this guy's really worried. But here's the flip side of that. I've been seeing more Biden signs here lately. The Democrats were late to the party, but we're finally seeing them. Let me know if you see them where you are. Our number here is 330-595-1600. Is that a call or is that a ghost in the machine?
We're taking a look. There's nothing coming up.
Okay.
It might have dropped.
Okay. All right. So I got a frozen screen here, so...
Let's refresh.
Okay. All right. Okay, I see it. I'm good. All right. Won't you love it when it's live? Okay. But let's take a quick look. These are 10 times, according to the Washington Post, that the President of the United States misled the American people concerning COVID-19.
We are coordinating with the Chinese government and working closely together on the coronavirus outbreak in China. My administration will take all necessary steps to safeguard our citizens from this threat. Now, the virus that we're talking about having to do, a lot of people think that goes away in April with the heat. Because of all we've done, the risk to the American people remains very low. People die from the flu, and this is very unusual. And it is a little bit different, but in some ways it's easier, and in some ways it's a little bit tougher. But we have it so well under control. I mean, view this the same as the flu. When somebody sneezes, I try and bail out as much as possible. It's going to disappear. One day, it's like a miracle. It will disappear. And from our shores, it could get worse before it gets better. It could maybe go away. We'll see what happens. Nobody really knows. The fact is, the greatest experts, I've spoken to them all, nobody really knows. We're ordering a lot of supplies. We're ordering a lot of elements that, frankly, we wouldn't be ordering unless it was something like this. But we're ordering a lot of different elements of medical. Now the Democrats are politicizing the coronavirus. And this is their new hoax. If you're healthy, you will probably go through a process and you'll be fine. You take a solid flu vaccine, you don't think that would have an impact or much of an impact on corona?
No, he's asking the question, when is it going to be deployable? And that is going to be at the earliest a year to a year and a half, no matter how fast you go.
Do you think that's right? And as you said, treatment's going to be available before the vaccine.
Well, I think treatment in many ways might be more exciting. If, we have thousands or hundreds of thousands of people that get better just by, sitting around and even going to work. Some of them go to work.
Well, okay, and by the way, that comment was from March 4th, and the president did go before the nation on March 11th, so a little earlier than that. But like I said, mere roughly days before he decided, hey, this is serious enough that I'm going to have to address the nation about it. He was trying to downplay it on the Hannity program. So, but I put something out on Facebook, and it said, you folks who think that this revelation will have any effect on the average Trump voters, get out of that dream. And I mean it. Get out of that dream. I think long ago we entered a phase with this president where he has proven something he said during the campaign. He really could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and they'd still vote for him. And we know this is true because almost 200,000 Americans are dead, and a lot of them will vote for him. They're excited to vote for him. But I got a question for you Trump supporters. I never get it. Why do you guys always overcompensate? When I do see a Biden sign, I see one Biden sign. I don't see 5 Biden signs, and here's a banner, and woo, here's a giant blow up of the president. It's like, really, folks? I mean, this is why I call it Cult 45. It's not just support of a political figure. It's Christmas. And I'm not, like I said, I must admit the enthusiasm for him is great. And this is one question I ask. Do you think that Joe Biden may be a little underwhelming? Of course, he's trying to be the steady hand. He's got the experience. He's not into the name calling. He's citing scientists. He believes in climate change. All those are positives as far as I'm concerned. But it seems that the loudest voice in the room is still getting the most attention. And of course, that voice is usually Donald J. Trump. But here's just a random comment. This lady, she's I would say a political influencer, if you will. She calls herself Heather G. And it's Heather G TV. And there's a fleeting expletive. Seems like she can't get through any of her commentary without at least one. But I think she makes a very good point.
About the virus or its effects since day one.
I wanted to always play it down.
But President Clorox Shots is certainly hell-bent on getting us a cure.
If we get the vaccine early, that's a great thing. In speed like nobody's ever seen before.
We think there is a miracle around the corner.
A vaccine isn't a water into wine situation, it's science. And with the election looming, it's suddenly really important to Trump. A vaccine holds the key to getting this sad 2020 train back on track. And make no mistake, Trump is rushing to the finish line. Remember Fauci? Yeah, it's been a while since we've heard from America's favorite doc, because Trump tried to have him muzzled, just like he did with the CDC, pressuring them into changing testing guidelines. But we need to play this safe. One of the trials was just put on hold after patients contracted an unexplained illness. No, thank you. Trust scientists, not politicians, and especially not the guy who
wants us to inject bleach.
Especially not that guy. But here we are, and this thing is, like I said, it's not going away. But this is the part I brought out on Facebook today. It's so disheartening to me to see people acting like it's over. And when you see this video of different college students, having keggers and getting down like it's 1999 or something, when in fact we know that that virus is still out there. And this is why I meant to get it today. Tomorrow I'm getting my flu shot. A little early for me, but I think the sooner the better. And that's no guarantee. As the president asked, will a flu shot do it? No, but I want to make sure that I'm not weakened by the good old-fashioned flu, so that I might be more susceptible to this new menace that's out there. And it's out there. Please believe that. But even though that's out there, folks, there are still people who their biggest concern is they just don't want to wear a mask. Because we are a nation of babies. I asked a rhetorical question earlier. Why are we leading the world in infections and deaths? I tell you why. Because of behavior like this.
Now, hundreds have gathered here in front of the Washington County Administration building, calling for the end of a mask mandate, saying they are tired of not living their normal lives. A passionate call for action Friday morning in St. George. Several police officers on standby as many locals called concerns about coronavirus spikes overblown.
The flu kills more than coronavirus.
Others calling the virus a hoax or stating that asymptomatic carriers simply do not exist and they cannot be forced to wear masks anywhere as citizens of the United States.
If we want to wear a mask, that's fine. We can take care of ourselves.
Some rally attendees say they shouldn't ever wear masks if they have any medical issues or mental health concerns, or if they feel they simply can't breathe.
When George Floyd was saying, I can't breathe, and then he died, and now we're wearing a mask, and we say, I can't breathe, but we're being forced to wear it anyway.
But many stated that they believe in all cases, masks jeopardize kids' health. Parents are demanding they have the right to decide what to do with their children.
I'll tell you another reason I hate masks. Most child molesters love them.
School administrators responding that they don't understand why crowds are protesting them based on a mandate given by the governor.
They blocked off the front entrance to the school building, and we went out to ask them to move, and they attempted to storm the school building.
The school board is implementing the governor's recent order that face shields alone are not enough. And if a parent is adamant that their child cannot wear a mask or a shield, they must fill out a form including a doctor's note so the district can review it.
And that was from the CBS 4 out of Utah. So they're out there, folks. But the one comment that there's a couple of comments in here. The older lady somehow saying that pedophiles love kids in masks. I don't know where she got that notion. But are we? I know you're just guessing where it is. But
all right.
Yeah, hold on. Because one woman said something. There she goes. Now. And I'll let her make her statement and we'll come back because I found this particularly disturbing.
I can't breathe, and then he died, and now we're wearing a mask, and we say, I can't breathe, but we're being forced to wear it anyway.
But many stated that they...
Well, lady, here's the thing, and she's comparing herself to George Floyd. Well, guess what, lady? He couldn't just get that cop's knee off his neck and walk away. Once you pick up your stuff at Walmart, you can take your mask off and then you can breathe. Mr. Floyd can't breathe permanently. So bad analogy. But let's keep looking at things here. Well, this is fascinating to me as well. This was from a Trump rally in Nevada. I brought it up earlier. One of the rallies was outdoors, I believe, but the other one was held indoors. But what CNN couldn't help but notice was the fact that, well, they just asked, why are you not wearing a mask? Because it seems like a relevant question. We're in the middle of a pandemic. You're supposed to be social distancing or wearing a mask. Yeah, and I'm trying to remember the reporter on this. Just a minute. Let me see real quick. Because this guy actually temporarily lost his press credentials for the White House. How can I forget this guy's name? He's one of my favorite troublemakers. It doesn't matter, but okay, keep talking, okay? Anyway, though, yeah, I just find it, don't you find it remarkable that with 200,000 people dead, 1,000 Americans a day, roughly, still dying, that you still have people who question whether or not this is an actual event. They still want to believe. And the logic, such as it is, there is no logic. So you're trying to tell me, not only is the U.S. in on this hoax, but China, India, Russia, all these other countries, they're in on it too. And how about, I know everybody's got, probably your drunk Uncle Bob who's telling you, you wait and see. All that corona stuff's going away. November 3rd, you wait and see. Well, I sure will be waiting, because I got a funny feeling November 4th, there'll still be people with coronavirus in hospital rooms and people lining up. Maybe even some people who went to Trump rallies. So, and the fact that they do, this is what gets me. The enthusiasm factor that I'm talking about. So much so that they're willing to risk their lives. I don't know if they're still having to sign a release to go to these rallies, but they can't wait to get there. And that's what, that kind of devotion really makes me nervous. I mean, it's like they don't hesitate. Their full faith is in this man. And I cannot relate in any way. But let's take a look at some of the attendees of the one of the Nevada Trump rallies.
Wearing masks. I have one with me. It's my prerogative. Yeah. But why not wear one to stay safe? I have a hard time understanding people when they talk, so that's why I don't wear it. But you can hear me right now? I can hear you. Sure. Why are you not wearing your mask?
Because there's no COVID. It's a fake pandemic created to destroy the United States of America.
But the president said to Bob Woodward that there is a virus, the coronavirus, and that it is deadly.
That's his opinion. The truth is that the CDC said there's only less than 10,000 people die from COVID. The other 190,000 have 2.6 or 2.8 other mortalities.
Does it worry you guys at all to be in this crowded space with all these? I'm not afraid. The good Lord takes care of me. If I die, I die. We got to get this country moving. Can't, what are you going to do? Wear masks and stay inside for another year? Huh? Where will that get us?
If he dies, he dies, and hopefully before Election Day. But that's only me. I know that's a little cruel, but I'm really at the point now where I'm just wondering, where does science even matter anymore? We've moved into this period of anti-intellectualism that's not only sad, but it's dangerous. The phrase that Kellyanne Conway coined, alternative facts. You know, when you hear a guy say that the president says this, the president is saying something or quoting some medical expert. He's not just pulling stuff out of thin air, and it's not his opinion. Science is not an opinion. If I drop my phone right now, gravity is going to make it hit the floor. That's not up for discussion. That's a reality. And if you walk around in crowded situations long enough, there's a very good chance you could get sick. We'll see what happens, won't we? I'm not wishing this on you, but I'll say this. If you get sick, I won't be shedding any tears either. And sadly, I mean that from the bottom of my heart, because this is 2020. We're in the 21st century, and you got people walking around with a mentality from the 19th century. We know how diseases are spread. We're learning more and more about how this disease is spread, yet you refuse to comply. And it's not a matter of, this is what gets me, and I use the word comply because these people trying to say, oh, they're just testing us out to see how they can control us and all this nonsense. I'm so sick of that foolishness, and that's what it is. Because lives are at stake, lives have been lost, and more lives will be lost because you are so ignorant. Because you can't figure it out, that this is not a game. This is not a political strategy to make Trump look bad. Trump is making himself look bad by the way he's mishandled this since day one. But you'll decide in November whether or not you allow him to continue mishandling this. When I listen to Joe Biden talk, as unexciting as he can be, he's talking about taking practical solutions and listening to the scientists and the doctors, not just thinking about stuff like maybe if you shoot with the disinfectant. Wow. But hey, I may not be impressed, but these people are. Take a look at this crowd before one of those Trump rallies in Nevada.
Damn it! Excuse me! Back up!
And by the way, I don't know if you could see that in frame, but I got that off a guy's Twitter account, and and this was a white guy, and he called it the running of the white people, which I apologize for in my retweet of his tweet. I said, racial comments aside, what did I say? Yeah, this is cultish as heck. What do they see in him? Well, I think I've been asking that for the last 4 years. I just see a loudish bully who lies. That's what I see. And I see a guy who, even now, he's playing political games with states that don't have, if it's a blue state, it's kind of like you got to wait in line. He's going to go where he's appreciated. That's not how the presidency works. I never saw, if you remember when the Superstorm Sandy really messed up New York and New Jersey, Barack Obama came straight to New Jersey to do what he could, offer what federal assistance he could to the people of New Jersey. And then Governor, I can see him. Why can't I see him? Oh my gosh. The big guy.
Chris Christie?
Chris Christie, thank you. And remember, and he hugged Chris Christie and called hell for it. Have we become that divided that a Democratic president can't hug a Republican governor and offer support without it turning into some type of scandal? But that's where we are. I don't think you'd see that under a President Joe Biden. Joe Biden has worked with Republicans, and I think he would reach out to Republicans. Because if things go like they could, if there is a President Biden, there's a very good chance that he would have a Democratic-controlled Congress. So Republicans would be out of power, but they'd still be needed unless Democrats eliminate the filibuster rule, which is what they want to do. But otherwise, they would need 60 votes, and you wouldn't always have those votes without trying to get some Republicans to come over to your side. If it goes like it could, best case scenario, if you're a Democrat, the Democrats win the White House and control of the Senate. What they need to be careful not to do is what both parties do when they're in charge. When there's one party rule, there's a tendency for that party to overreach. And when you overreach, you turn people off, and you almost guarantee that the next election cycle, the midterms, will be flipped over to that opposing party. That's what happened with Barack Obama. He had a Democratic-controlled government for his first couple of years, and the midterms came, and his passage of Obamacare and the way they did it, without a single Republican vote, led to a Republican, as President Obama called it at the time, shellacking of the Democrats. So I would just say, if you pull this off, Democrats, don't overplay your hand. But yeah, this is something from the Lincoln Project, and it's talking about the president has spent a lot of money, maybe even up to $1 billion. His campaign has. He's threatened to spend his own money. But of course, what's sad is, to this day, there's probably still some Trump fan out there that thinks he self-financed his last campaign as he promised to, but eventually didn't. He took outside money. He took $30 million alone from the NRA. That's why they own him. But the president hinted that he might use some of his own money. We'll wait and see if that happens. But the money he already had, let's take a look at what's happened with that. This is from the Lincoln Project.
Those unexpected expenses and items that went over budget. You really don't get what they did, do you, Donald? The beach houses, the fancy cars. It starts with a little falling off the truck and then more falls off, and pretty soon that $800 million you raised did nothing but make a lot of people rich and put you in a big hole. What can you do? Call your own campaign crooks? You hired them. You or that idiot Jared Kushner. You really don't think he's in on the con, Donald? Nobody has ever spent almost $1 billion to go down 10 points. You really have to work at that. But when you hire nothing but the best, they can get it done. Donald Trump. Today, he's just a sucker who got played. On November 3rd, he'll be the biggest loser, sucker in American history. Don the Con got con. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content.
Oh, that's all of that. Lincoln Project, thank you. And closer we get to Election Day, I'll be running abbreviated versions of those commercials, because I think as we get closer to the election, it's just a little inside baseball. I think they'll say, well, wait a minute, now you're giving them a free campaign ad on our platform. So you don't want to do that. So I'll be playing portions of these ads in the future. But I wanted to give you the point. By the way, everything in there is true. He has spent a lot of money, but that's the other thing. On the encouraging side, if you look at the fundraising for Biden beat Trump in fundraising for both July and August. So that I think once he picked Kamala Harris, I think that made a drastic change in people's thoughts about Joe Biden. I think it was a calculated move to pick someone who checks two boxes. She is both a minority and a woman. But she is, to make it sound like that's the only thing she's got going for herself. Let's remember, this is not some dummy. And even though early, some of the sleazier people on the left tried to say she slept her way to the top. Well, let's clear the air on what they're referring to there. When she was a very young staffer, she did engage in an affair with then Mayor of San Francisco, Willie Brown. And that was years and years ago. And the mayor had been separated from his wife for some time before that even happened. I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying, okay, so that happened. But then with no input from Willie Brown, she went on to become the first black attorney general of California. And she's also, I think she was the first black district attorney in LA, at least first black female at least. So she's got a lot of firsts she accomplished on her own. And now, of course, she is a U.S. senator. And now she is the first, I would say, biracial female candidate for president of the United States. I do want to correct something I said a few weeks ago, though. I brought up Geraldine Ferraro as way back in the 70s. I believe that might have been 1980. That was when Mondale ran against Reagan, and his vice president was Geraldine Ferraro. That was a first. I skipped ahead to Hillary Clinton running for president. I forgot that John McCain picked Sarah Palin. So I want to be historically correct there. So the Republicans have picked a woman as a vice presidential candidate in the past as well. Once again, let me take a look. I've really not been paying enough attention to the comments. And Tim says, good afternoon from a suddenly fall-like Akron. I totally agree with you, Tim. And I'm not sure. I'd heard about this, Tim. I'll put it out there. But as I said, I believe his enthusiasm is real. But of course, he doesn't leave anything to chance. And Tim says, Trump campaign recently had an ad on Craigslist seeking actors to appear at Trump rallies and cheer and act excited. $12 an hour plus $2 if they wear a Trump 2020 t-shirt, which I'd need to be paid more than that to do that. But it says a friend who's Craigslist savvy confirmed the ad. Okay. And Let's see. Raymond says, I did. No go. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know if he can't see me. It says, Raymond, completely close out Facebook, then come in. Okay. He's trying to get to us. I hope you find us, Raymond. And thanks for helping him out there, Debbie. Okay. But anyway, let's keep talking a few more minutes here, because there's one more thing I want to talk about, and that is the president's skepticism on climate change strikes yet again. Of course, it's almost a routine that every year they have these fires in California, but the amount of fires going right now are historical, not only in California, but in Oregon and Washington State. You also have record hurricane season lining up. Right now, you've got 3 active hurricanes out there in the ocean and 1 tropical storm. And this is a little early for all that. And by the way, totally unrelated, while I'm talking about stuff, let's remember, I don't want to throw too much at you, but let's remember that this president, because Congress wasn't able to get anything together, this president cobbled together his plan where he would borrow money from FEMA funds to try to cover people on their unemployment. So where you were getting pandemic assistance of $600 a month, now using the president's plan and this borrowed money in the middle of a hurricane season. But of course, Congress can reappropriate more money if needed, but still, it's just the idea. So anyway, so the federal government will give each state $300 per person, but then it's up to the states to kick in another $100 per person. So at least you'll get $400 for pandemic unemployment assistance. Well, the problem is most of those states are broke, or of course they have to balance their budget. So they're already in trouble. They can't afford that money, Mr. President. You know it. But not to bash Trump for once, I also bash both the Democrats and the Republicans, because this should have been handled. People are standing in food lines. People haven't received an unemployment check. Some people never got their first check. The stimulus, we're running out of time for any of this to happen. And yet you folks never miss a check, no matter what happens. And I think it's disgusting. I think I've said it before. You should not have recessed until this was settled. You're working for us. At least you're supposed to be. And I don't care whether we're talking about Donald Trump going golfing or Nancy Pelosi getting her hair fixed. All that can wait, I would think, until we feed the hungry in this country and try to get people in a position where they can pay their mortgage and pay for other basic necessities. Don't forget, as I said, you work for us, folks. And right now you're failing miserably. But let's take a look at the president talking about climate change. This was before he had his meeting with the governor of California, and that got a little testy and all, but this is from Fox News.
Trees fall down after a short period of time, about 18 months. They become very dry. They become really like a matchstick. And they get up, there's no more water pouring through, and they become very, very, they just explode. They can explode. Also, leaves. When you have years of leaves, dried leaves on the ground, it just sets it up. It's really a fuel for a fire. So they have to do something about it. They also have to do cuts. I mean, people don't like to do cuts, but they have to do cuts in between. So if you do have a fire and it gets away, you'll have a 50-yard cut in between, so it won't be able to catch to the other side. They don't do that. If you go to other countries, you go to Austria, you go to Finland, you go to many different countries, and they don't have fire. I was talking to a head of a major country, and he said, we're a forest nation. We consider ourselves a forest nation. This was in Europe. I said, that's a beautiful term. He said, we have trees that are far more explosive. He meant explosive in terms of fire. But we have trees that are far more explosive than they have in California, and we don't have any problem because we manage our forests. So we have to do that in California, too. So I'll go do this, and we'll see you.
Yeah, so he went to do that, and I'll show you a little footage from that meeting with the Governor Newsom of California, and the president was even challenged. I don't think I have that on these clips, but the president was challenged by one of the governor's staffers about the reality of climate change. He refuses to agree, and the whole principle I don't get it. Oh, wait a minute. Raymond. Well, welcome, Raymond. He said, finally made it, Mo. Good to see you. Well, good to see you, Raymond. And yes, and Tim, that was insanity, wasn't it? But I don't know. Like I said, at this point in the game, for anybody to be questioning that something's going on, when you look on right now on either coast of this gigantic country that we live in, there are natural disasters happening, and they're happening with a frequency that you haven't seen. In the Midwest, you've got floods. You've got a lot of issues here. But this goes on a minute, but bear with me. This is CNN, and they're talking about basically the president. Oh, yeah, the other thing that he did. How could I forget? If Jack Kevorkian, Dr. Death, were still around, this president would probably have him as Surgeon General. Because here's a president who's put a guy who is an adamant climate science denier in charge of NOAA. That is our weather service, the people that tell us about the hurricanes and such. So why would you put this guy in charge? I don't know. Maybe the same reason you put a guy who is an oil industry person in charge of the Interior Department. Forget our beautiful lands. Let's get drilling. But anyway, this goes into multiple things, but let's take a look at this report from CNN.
Fires devastate western states. As America's southern coasts continue to get pounded by more frequent hurricanes, President Trump continues his assault on climate science.
It'll start getting cooler. You just watch.
And the president's team is facing blistering criticism tonight for reportedly appointing a climate science denier to a top position at America's preeminent weather and climate agency. David Lee Gates has been tapped to be a top deputy at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, known as NOAA. That's according to NPR and the Washington Post.
This is a dangerous pick for NOAA because it threatens the thousands of NOAA scientists who conduct and communicate climate science every day. Gates has a long record of accepting fossil fuel industry funds and spreading disinformation about climate science.
According to the Post, Lee Gates was once forced out of a job as the state of Delaware's climatologist because of his research, paid for in part by the fossil fuel industry, which cast doubt on the science showing that the burning of coal and other fuels were main factors in climate change. At a House hearing last year, Lee Gates openly disputed the belief of many climate scientists that carbon dioxide is mainly responsible for heating up the planet.
That has little to do with carbon dioxide. It has to do with the demise of the Little Ice Age and warming conditions we've had due to an increasing sun.
According to NPR, in 2007, Lee Gates helped author a paper funded partially by the oil industry that questioned scientific findings about the role of climate change in destroying polar bears' habitats. He now heads to an agency, NOAA, which watchdog groups say has a long history of nonpartisan, very credible work in providing the country with weather and climate information.
And we're running out of time, so I want to leave that there. But I can't believe he's put this guy in charge of NOAA. So you see how this president works. If there's an investigator he doesn't like, he fires them. If somebody is a whistleblower, he makes sure to take retribution, as he did with Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, destroying this man's his military career. And then not only for extra measure, he fires not only Vindman, but he fires his brother. Well, if you want to hear the president, by the way, he'll be sitting down with George Stephanopoulos and other people tonight. He'll be doing a town hall on ABC, and I want to see him in that format. I don't know. I'll at least record it. I don't know if I'll be able to watch the whole thing because I get kind of bored of just listening to somebody lie. But at least when real people get to ask questions, maybe they'll throw him off balance, and maybe he can't just jump into his usual BS. Also, there's going to be a town hall on CNN on Thursday with Joe Biden and Anderson Cooper. You might want to check that out. And Stanley says, great show. Thank you. Thank you, Stanley. Tell your friends. Tim says, Betsy DeVos has never been in a public school in her life before being appointed to the Department of Education. Only the best people. But let's remember, Tim, that she owns a lot of these charter schools. And don't you see they keep talking about education choice? What they're trying to do is destroy the public school system for whatever reason. I guess to put more money in the pocket of Betsy DeVos, who owns 10 yachts. But You can never make enough money, can you? Anyway, we're running out of time because there's never enough time. I want to thank Mario for making everything right. And, well, let's let the other guys get started with their show. I'm Mo Ray. I'll see you Thursday. Check us out. You can, if you missed any part of this program, it'll be archived later. You can check it out in its entirety. So, Mo Ray saying, as I always do, keep your eyes on the prize.